You're right on time because Orange Juice in the Kitchen is about to get started. We're your hosts. I'm Annie Graff.
And I'm Maggie Jensen. Pull up a chair because the OJ is flowing and it's about to get juicy.
We're getting deep in our convos about sobriety and mental health because that's how we've both found deep love for ourselves and the lives we live.
And when you love yourself in your life, there's nothing to escape. This is the real on how vibrant and colorful alcohol freedom feels. So grab your glass.
Cheers, besties. Let's chat.
We are back at the table. Welcome. Pull up your chair. We are having a really deep talk today. We've spent a lot of time going back and diving into both of our crazy adventures, endeavors, dangerous drinking lifestyles. We've talked so much about, what led us to sobriety, what were all of those hiccups, what were our cycles, our toxic relationship with alcohol. And so today we wanted to do something different. We wanted to zoom in on the experiences that we had in our most recent, most successful sobriety season and how we went from sober curiosity to actually sober confidence. And Annie and I both had really, I would say, unique experiences, right? But at the same time, different timelines.
Yeah.
Different phases of our lives. But when we talk and we are like, what did we do differently this time? What did we do differently than most traditional sobriety? We find these common threads. And so today we wanted to spotlight those things that we did that really, really worked. So I'm going to pass it over to Annie and we're going to just dive in. It's like from sober curiosity to shit, now what?
Literally, so you're sober curious. Now fucking what? Because I felt I was in that place for so long where I was like, yeah, alcohol is not serving me. Why do I keep turning back to it? It's like going back to an ex that isn't good for you, but for some reason you keep, on those lonely nights, it's maybe Thursday night, you're looking forward to the weekend and you're like, I have no guy or girl to text right now. And you're like, let me just see what that ex is up to. That was alcohol for me for so long where I'm like, I know I'm trying to part ways, but they still keep finding their way back to me. Or because we're taking control over this, I am choosing to step back into that. And that kept me in a cycle for a long time. A cycle where I was like, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, where it's like, no, I got this. I can do this by myself. I can pinky promise and no alcohol November and sober October. And let me just take 30 days off. And let me try to do this fitness challenge where they tell me I can't drink. So then obviously I won't drink. And then if I can make it through that, everything will be solved. And obviously I won't have a problem. So then after that, I can drink. I kept telling myself these kind of weird rules around drinking, and none of that stuck. None of that had me in a place where sobriety felt fucking good and exciting and invigorating and in the best way. And so we wanted to share with you guys, yeah, you're sober curious, now fucking what? So for me, this happened, actually both of us, it was January 1st. And I don't know what it was, but for so long, for those leading months, and we've talked about these stories with you guys, for those leading months, it was, I'm going to try. Finally, I was like, no, I'm going to do. And what that meant for me was that I needed to align myself in the way and in areas of my life that a sober person who loves sobriety would be aligned with. And for me, because I've had a forever passion for health and fitness was there. And a business passion. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. So I was like, okay, maybe I set these business goals. And then also deep down knowing a sober person would probably go to fucking therapy. So maybe I should invest in that. And so those were kind of my three things when I look back on really where I felt I needed to put energy into. Those are the three categories that came up for me. Now, they might look different for you if you're listening to this and you're like, well, health and fitness isn't necessarily my passion. But maybe it is something that you feel like, well, a sober version of me would probably fuck with a little bit of gym time. Probably, right? So the thing about these areas, and I know Maggie can share kind of what those areas were for her. The thing about those areas were, yeah, I can just on my own go to the gym more. And I mean, as a personal trainer, I was a personal trainer at this time, still an online coach, a fitness enthusiast. And even in my drinking days, I was still in the gym, like actually. So you might be thinking, you're like, well, yeah, what would the difference be dabbling in the gym like you were when you were drinking, and then you really committing to, okay, how would a sober person approach the gym? For me, it was I needed to hire a coach, and that's what I did. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I could just challenge myself to be in the gym more, but if I really want to be held accountable, I'm going to put that on someone else's plate, and I'm going to choose who I want to trust with that accountability, because obviously I've shown myself that that's not exactly where my confidence lies. You know, guys, at the end of the day, confidence is you looking back and seeing what evidence you have on the way you show up in your life. So you might be thinking, you're like, well, you know, and this is where I was. I have confidence that I probably can't stick to a sober lifestyle. And you might see that as like, well, so you were not confident. No, I was pretty confident that I couldn't stick to it. And I wanted to be confident in the opposite. I wanted to be confident in loving sobriety and living into sobriety and loving myself in sobriety. So I needed to start showing up in those ways to stack evidence, to have like literal proof for myself that that's how I show up. And honestly, that meant investing in a coach and investing in somebody whose interest and main purpose was going to be holding me accountable in that way. So I could stack the evidence for me to be confident in that same way. Does that make sense? Maggie, I don't know if you have an experience there with just that specific thing I just, kind of went on a tangent on, but
You want to hear a funny story?
Always.
When you were saying like, I'm already working out maybe while I'm drinking, how would getting a coach or investing in fitness help me? I was that person that was like, I'm already going to the gym and I'm hitting 5-6 workouts a week somehow in my hangover shame. And I flashed back to this one time where I was at a title boxing class and I was hungover, probably still a little bit intoxicated. And we were doing box jumps and I ate it. I jumped. I did not clear. I have a huge scar on my calf, on my shin. And it's just like, looking back, I was like, yeah, I'm going working out, blah, blah, blah. But like, was I, or was I just going to hurt myself and my poor body?
Going to take the selfie. Honestly, that was a big thing. Like, I have so many memories of like hungoverly going to the gym because I knew, like, if I really wasn't that hungover, I would be at the gym, and I kind of want to prove to everyone that I'm fucking fine. So I would like go to the gym, take the gym selfie, look around at the equipment, like skid on something, do a few reps, do a few sets, to kind of have that in my head that, yeah, I went to the gym. But was I really in the gym? No,
Right.
I wasn't really in the gym in the way that I wanted to be in the
Physically, I was there. Physically, you check my name off.
Yeah.
Mentally, I was not. I was counting down until we got done.
Yeah.
I was laying on the mat as much as possible. Anyway, I kind of say all of that because it's easy to like rationalize that you're doing all of the things. But like, is the intention just to prove that your drinking is under control? Is your intention just to try to make you feel like a healthy person despite the toxic habits? So, for me, I think I had a few more bumps in the road. When I look at Annie's journey and my journey, we both started in January. I started January 2020. She started 2023.
Yep.
Right. I started in January, but I didn't really do anything different that January other than like sitting around and telling myself not to drink, and like sitting out on the events and just kind of isolating and reading quit literature, which is like the sobriety literature. It's helpful maybe for some in the beginning, but for me, it actually had me continuing to think about alcohol and think about like, how am I going to live like them forever? Like it almost scared me more than it helped.
Yeah.
And in February, I had a few, back steps. I went to a wedding and I thought, well, I made it through dry January and I'm fine. And I wasn't fine. I believe I've told that story here. I yelled at my husband, who was in a neck brace, for not dancing with me. So anyway, it wasn't until the end of February, beginning of March, that I started to toil with the idea of actually spending my money that I was saving on not drinking, spending that money on like what it would look like to become a personal trainer, what it would look like to become a role model that helped people with nutrition. So nutrition coaching, being a nutritionist. And those were my passions. And those were things that brought me joy even when I was drinking, but it wasn't my identity. I actually like questioned, am I healthy?
Yeah.
I'm showing up to the gym to prove that I'm healthy. But in the back of my mind, what would people think about me if they knew the real me? And that was like this question that almost drove me to drinking more, because I was like, the real me is a drunk, hot mess. And I remember the exact moment where I was finally like, you know what? If I don't want this forever, who do I want to be? I want to invest in my certifications. I want to invest in a business coach to teach me how to build a business. I was not a prior entrepreneur. I had no idea how to run a business. So like it clicked in me to say, okay, I'm going to take what I was spending on that alcohol and I'm going to put it towards personal training and nutrition programs to become certified. I'm going to put it towards a business coach, like a person that I was talking to daily. And what this was doing was like, if I did think about alcohol, it was, oh, that's not who I'm becoming anymore. That's not who I am anymore. And it was replaced with like this excitement of, I've got my business coach in my pocket. He's making sure that I'm doing X, Y, and Z every day. And I'm so excited about it. And it was also, I mean, tell me if this rings true for you as well. It was also like finally doing something that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because I think drinking just masked the whole idea that my life was built around, I got jobs that I thought I could, that they were basically all I could get. I was like, I guess I have to take this job. I never thought about what I wanted, but I only thought about like what I could do.
Yeah. Okay. So that actually hits a huge heart chord for me, because that's what bodybuilding was for me. Because in the past, like I had stepped on stage before and I knew I could do it, and I knew I could do it really fucking well too. But it also, at that time, it was like a countdown to when can I go out with the homies, and when can I go out with all of my friends? When can I get drunk again? And so it really didn't have the foundation of wanting to do it. So anyway, when I, end of 2022, when I had, by the way, a lot of those phases of what you were saying, kind of your January, February looked like, it's not that I didn't have those. It's just I had those before I was like, fuck it, January 1st is going to be my day. Like, this is going to be it. And it wasn't my day of forever sobriety, by the way, guys. And I've talked about this before. It was my day one of 6 months, because I'm going to do 6 months. And I'm going to figure out what I'm capable of in those 6 months. And we'll see what happens at the end. But anyway, I was like, you know what? Like, I've been wanting, it had been on my mind to see what I was capable of in terms of bodybuilding and being back on stage. And that was something I wanted to do. But also when I looked at like the relationships I was in, and like, I was like, what would this person that I was with think of me if now my whole purpose was, getting on stage? And well, what would all my friends think? Would they think that's kind of stupid to like get back into bodybuilding? And so anyway, I say that because there were a lot of things that kind of were making me question my desire to step back on stage. So when I finally, January 1st, was like, no, I'm going to I'm going to do sobriety. Exactly that question came to my mind. Like, well, then what do I want to do in that time? What does Annie feel a calling to do? And getting back on stage and taking that seriously this time, seriously in the way, not of winning, but in a way of like, if I'm committed to just showing up as my best self, one day after the other, after the other, after the other, like I said before, just stack that evidence for me that I can do that. That sounds like something that a thriving sober person would do. So that meant, okay, I'm going to dial up my bodybuilding coaches from back in 2018. First off, see if they'll still take me. See if they have the capacity for me as a client. Thank God they did. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to invest in this desire of mine because it aligns with the deeper desire of sobriety. And I know that I can only show up for bodybuilding if I'm sober. I mean, like I knew from my past prep and my past experience that like literally in a prep, you can't drink. So like, I'm like, I know that's going to hold me committed there at least. But then the next step is I'm literally paying somebody at this point. It's like $500, little bit over a month to guide me in this journey to stage. So yeah, I'm not going to be available for the bars tonight, guys. I have fasted cardio in the morning. Like I have a check-in to send to my coach on Sunday. And if on Thursday I'm going out, my Sunday pics are going to look like trash. And I'm not going to let them see that for something I'm paying them to guide me on, you know? And that for me was a big motivator of like, it's not just talking the talk of, okay, I want to love sobriety and I want to do sobriety and I want to see what it's like and I want to love life outside of alcohol and I'm curious about what are sober people doing, and like it was so much more than just talking the talk. It's like I'm gonna walk the walk now, because I think I've talked a lot of it, or really it was an internal discussion for me, less of a social conversation I was having with my friends, but I talked the talk in my head a lot, and that wasn't getting me anywhere. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to walk the walk and put my money where my mouth is, literally and metaphorically. And I'm going to pay someone to help me align my lifestyle with this lifestyle I've been just heavy thinking about, living in my mind rent free. It's gonna pay rent now, but it's also gonna pay dividends in the lifestyle it creates for myself. And that for me was huge, because finally I was stepping into something I wanted to do, and bonus points because it aligned with that deep desire for living and learning about myself in sobriety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I would think back like on it, one of my biggest, I guess, walls that I had up too was I didn't like the word sober. I didn't like the idea of that. I'd watched my mom with it. I'd been in AA so much. Like I didn't like the idea of like sitting around and identifying, creating my whole life around I don't drink.
Yeah.
I don't drink. Like announcing that in every room and like telling everybody your life story about how you can't have a drink because even one, you have to have 20. All of this was like this preconceived notion about sobriety. And I was like, I don't want to be sober. I just want to be the person who has so many fun things that are so aligned, so authentic to me that there's no room for it. Like I think about it and I'm like, that's not what an entrepreneur who has a lot of fun, amazing things going on in her life, that she doesn't have time for that. So I wanted to make alcohol irrelevant. And when you said like hiring the coach, stepping into that, you're stacking up evidence of like who you can be. I got chills because that was one of those aha moments for me, was like in the immediate redirecting of the funds. Let me tell you, I paid in bulk. I paid all up front. That was a major like, whoo, that was a scary moment. But the exact moment that I did it, I felt this wash of relief and ease. Like this is one big piece of evidence of the new me, of actually following through on what I've told myself I'm going to do for so long. And it was in a way that felt genuine to me. It wasn't investing in a sober sponsor or getting an AA sponsor. It wasn't anything that I'd ever considered before. And if I did, it was like, I could never do that.
Yeah.
And I was just finally ready to say, I think I can. And as soon as I hit that buy button, it was like I had a whole new energy about me.
Mm-hmm.
And my mind was like so eager to see what was next, and see what was next and do those things that my business coach gave me that I had to do to study, that I had to do to complete my tests. I was like, I don't even have time to think about how I used to mess everything up. It freed me from all of the shame and the guilt, and it replaced that with like, I'm a brand new person.
Yeah.
And it was like within the same day, just making that decision.
Yeah, literally. I mean, and when you said, this is what I love. One of the things I love about what you just said is like your goal. And I think it's very different from both of our stories. Cause me, I was like, I didn't have that block on the word sober, but I did actually. I have a story back in January, like saved on my phone, because I went on and I literally said this is hilarious. I'm like, don't worry guys, I'm not going to make sober my whole personality. It's just going to be something I'm like doing on the side. And like, but I'm like, I laugh because that at the time I did have a semi block on that word sober, because to me at the time it meant fucking boring. It meant not living life. It meant isolation. It meant solitude. It meant FOMO. It meant now what? Like, and I didn't know any other meaning other than that. So like, that's why I felt the need to like publicly disclaim, like, guys, I'm doing this, but it's not who I am. Like, which is so funny because now as I've created this epic, iconic, vibrant life in sobriety, I love that word. I actually love it. And in dating now, I love telling people when they're like, do you want to go like meet up for a drink? I'm like, actually, I'm sober. Like I fucking love saying that. But a year and a half ago, hell no, would I be caught dead telling somebody who's asking me out on a date that I'm sober, you know? So anyway, I love that you say that wasn't your goal. Because I think a lot of people listening can actually relate heavily to that. They're like, I don't even want to live a sober life. That's not the goal. The goal is just simply having alcohol not constantly show up as a barrier to living the life that fills me and fuels me and energizes me and excites me and keeps me going, and a life that I want to wake up every morning and live, because that's what most people want is that life. But the funny part is that sobriety is literally aligned with that. To me nowadays it's synonymous, but I know it hasn't always been that way. So I think that's so dope that you just said that, because I think that hits probably a chord for a lot of people being like, exactly. I don't want to be the sober girl. Like, and I get if you guys are listening that that's where you're at, and that might be one of the things holding you back, but it's okay. Have that like rooted, I'm going to call it a fear right now of the word sober. Totally fine. Keep that, until it doesn't serve you any longer. But with that, understand that, okay, maybe I don't want to be the sober girl, but maybe I want to do all these things that right now alcohol is getting in the way of. So what does that look like? And, just like Maggie and I said, investing in a business coach, investing in a personal trainer to help you get to a fitness goal, investing in an online coach. Like I said before, therapy. For me, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can think about all these things. And I at the time, like to think of myself like, I know what's wrong with me, so I don't need to pay a therapist to tell me what's wrong with me. Why would I do that? And January 1st came and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pay whoever to tell me all the things that are wrong with me, because maybe there are some blind spots I recognize. And so I
think we always need an outside opinion. It's so hard to see that for yourself.
Yeah.
And when somebody else can see it, you're like, that's worth every freaking penny I've paid you.
Yeah. Well, I remember even in my first, and at the time I was in a relationship, I remember my first therapy session, which, by the way, guys, I mean, I'm sure you know, therapy ain't cheap. It's not cheap, and it's worth it. Okay. So my first therapy session, I remember getting on, and I'm paying this, I was gonna say, I'm paying this bitch. No, she's a very fine woman. I'm paying this woman for an hour of her time. I think it's like 50 minutes actually. It's like those massages you pay for, and and they're 50 minutes, not an hour, and you're kind of bummed about the last 10 minutes, but it's okay. I'm paying her for her time. And it's like the therapy I was doing, it was like 150 per session, and I was doing 2 a month. So that's $300 out of my pocket going towards this. And the first session, I'm like, I don't know how much I'm going to get out of this. Like, we'll see. We start talking. I'm like 10 minutes into you guys can only imagine, ramble. And she stops me and she goes, Annie, this is a session for you. So I understand that you're talking about a lot of things that are in your life and that are causing you stress and anxiety and, all these other things that you're feeling. But like, you're talking a lot about, at the time, the person you're with, my partner. And I'm like, yeah, that's like heavy in my situation right now. Like, just things I'm thinking through. And she's like, okay, let's recognize that. Let's kind of table it and let's focus on you. Like, let's focus on what you're going through, not all these external things that are happening around you. And like the first session, and I say this just to say, like, that first session was such a light bulb. I was like, fuck. Yeah, I was about to
I've been looking outside. Yeah, I'm
like, I am paying you 150 for this. Definitely I want to focus inward, and I didn't even realize that was, definitely something that I was struggling with at the time. Anyway, I say this to say, like, the money you invest in having someone aligned with where you want to go, whether that's in your mental health journey, your fitness journey, your business journey, your
relationships, family,
everything, all these journeys, all these areas of our life that we want to progress, having someone, paying someone. Honestly, money is energy. That should be a different episode that we do, but like, money is energy, and you give energy to earn that money. So putting that money out is giving your energy in those areas. So if right now, and this is where I kind of found myself, leading up to my decision to experiment with sobriety, it was like, I'm giving a lot of energy to the bar. I'm giving a lot of energy to bottle service at the club. I'm giving a lot of energy to my bartenders
and then we wonder why we were so stuck in this cycle. It was like unconscious spending. I don't want to drink anymore, but take my money while I buy drinks, and I tip you, and I buy drinks for it's wild.
And I was that is where my energy was going. And so really in pivoting in January, when, and the whole point of this episode a little bit is like, where did that shift happen? As uncomfy of a conversation as it might be to have with yourself, it's like, are you giving energy? And in energy, I'm saying, are you giving money to stay in the season of your life that you're in right now? That's where I was when I was sober curious, but nothing was actually clicking, because even when I like took out alcohol, like I was still showing up to the bar, and then I end up ordering food, and then I end up a lot of times by the end of the night spending 5 hours there with friends. I'm like, fine, like, let me just have one drink. And you're giving energy, right? I wasn't, even when you're saving energy. So if you're like, no, I'm taking out alcohol, or for 30 days I took out alcohol, like your experience, Maggie, where you're like, my month one was really just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're saving energy, money, but you're not giving energy. You're not putting energy in the areas that you want to thrive in. So if that's a stuck point too with sobriety, is like, no shit, it doesn't sound fun to be sitting at home alone, day 1, day 5, day 17. Like, you're not putting any energy out into living a life that makes you feel energetic, And so that for me was huge, dishing out energy in these other ways to show up in those areas of my life to build the evidence that I am capable of being a competitor on stage, showing up to therapy and working through some deep shit, building a business that I'm proud of and excited by. So all those areas are areas that I was dishing out money, but also that is very representative of the energy I was putting forward. And almost it's like, think of it as like a placeholder. If you're putting money into something, you're like, I will show up here.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Like when you make a reservation on, there are some reservations on
Open Table or something.
Open Table where they're like, if you don't show up to your reservation, it's like $15. I'm showing up to that reservation. If the people that are meant to be at that reservation aren't there, I'm going, because I'm going to at least buy an app that's $15 to not spend $15 on nothing, right? So like we are very wired to think that way. And so think about that in your life, where are you putting energy as a placeholder for where you're going to show up? And if you're doing that, if you're deciding like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to spend money on alcohol. I'm not going to spend money on Ubers. I'm not going to spend money on tipping the bartender. I'm not going to spend money at the club. I'm not going to spend money on those events with my friends where I know alcohol is going to be there. Great. You're sitting on a shit ton of energy and you're bored in your house counting the days.
Stagnation.
That's not the life that you want. So put that energy as a placeholder for where you want to show up. And in the beginning, when you haven't stacked the evidence internally that you're capable of those areas, you gotta put the money where your mouth is. And this was the game changer for me and my sobriety, because before that I wasn't doing it. Before that I was just like, no, I promise in my head that I'm going to go to the gym more. I promise in my head that I'm going to be better at my business. I promise in my head I'm going to have a two-way conversation about therapy, things I should really be working on. Like I wasn't putting any energy as a placeholder. I'm just like realizing how impactful that is. Like I wasn't placeholding anything, so I wasn't showing up really for anything. There was nothing on the line. There was nothing holding me accountable other than the thoughts in my head about the ways I wanted to maybe potentially kind of try to show up.
I think, I can speak for both of us, correct me if I'm wrong, but our like aha click moment was realizing like I spend so much energy, AKA money, time. I work so hard in order to drink. If I really want to live the life that I keep talking about and promising myself in my mind, I have to work that hard and give just as much energy to get out of this state, to transform and move into this new identity. And, I saved up a lot of money in January not drinking. And I remember as you were saying that, I was like, I recall basically counting the money. And because I didn't do anything to placehold that change, I was literally thinking about how extravagant I could spend that money on drinking after I was fixed. And
it's like, imagine the bottle service I can get for all my friends. Like literally, no, I had that same thought. Actually when I said I was going to set out for 6 months. That was going to be around, because that was the show I was aiming for in bodybuilding, right? So I'm like, okay, that's about 6 months. Like, imagine that weekend if everyone comes out to my show and then afterward I'm just gonna fucking like blow money on bottle service, and oh my god, it's gonna be so fun because I'm gonna know I don't have a problem with alcohol. I obviously just cut it out for 6 months. And now thinking back to that, I'm like, and I'm so glad that in that moment that felt 0% aligned because of the work I had been doing, the placeholders I had put in my future to continue to show up for. I hadn't put any placeholder in my drinking personality. I hadn't put any like, I'm going to return back to that. So the deeper I got into my journeys in these other avenues, it was like, there's no tug for that. Like, and I got to that show, and instead of like, how am I gonna, ball out on this epic drinking weekend? Like, it was like, oh my God, yeah, I want to continue to pay my coaches because I want to do more shows. I want to continue. Was continuing with therapy. I want to actually invest more in more business coaches and in more business visions that I have. And it was so much it was just this constant, like, placeholder, show up, move up, placeholder, show
Oh,
up,
I
move
love
up.
that.
And I kept doing this in the areas that I wanted to progress, that when I look back 6 months later, my placeholder for my drinking personality was way back here. That the idea of like looking back, I mean, and if you guys are watching this on video, it's like looking back and being like, my last placeholder for my drinking, Annie, is way back there. Like, why would I want to do that? Why would I don't feel connected to that placeholder anymore. There's nothing invested in that area and that track of my life anymore. It wasn't this thought. Had so much energy moving me forward in these other areas that it was like there was nothing pulling me back. So if you're feeling this like sober curious, now what? I want to ask you, like, what placeholders are you putting in the direction you want to go, in the areas you want to go? And if you're like, well, I'm not really, then I encourage you to do so. Because if you're still sticking with the habits, the routines that you have in your drinking life, and putting energy into those relationships, those friendships, feeding your time into that same social circle, those same environments, those same people, those same routines, of course, that's where you're going to feel tied. But the second that you switch your track and you spend time placeholding, putting energy, showing up, right? And you keep doing that, you're going to get to a point where you're like, wow, there's nothing that has me feeling tied to that old version of me. And that's the goal you want to get to. That's where you want to arrive, quote unquote. There's no arrival.
You're there. Yeah.
It's the same, like this same visual, because like when you're showing up in these areas, it's a constant, I'm getting close to this next placeholder. It just excites me even more to place that even a little bit further as a placeholder for the energy I'm going to continue to put into that track, right? And like that's literally a visual. I know a lot of people are listening to this podcast wise, so there's no visual, but we're going to put this up as a video for you guys to watch as well. Hopefully you can kind of imagine what that looks like, like a game board, a game piece of like, I'm placing that forward. That's my energy investment, right? So investment in the fitness coach, investment in the therapy, investment in the business coach, investment in the relationship coach, investment in whatever that is, in starting the business, getting the materials, whatever. You're investing. Okay, that's a placeholder for eventually, like, that's where my energy needs to be funneled. All right, now I'm going to show up. And then you're there. Once you start seeing that place that you're, putting energy into, it's like, I'm going to place a little bit further. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep feeding this energy in this track and keep showing up in these ways. That's when sobriety gets fucking fun. And that's where it's not like, I'm this sober girl sitting on the couch, sitting on all this energy, feeling fucking bored. We don't want you to feel that. That's not what sobriety is.
I think that is what takes the experience from sitting on the couch bored and then like having to turn down drinks, but on the inside actually wanting them more than anything. That's what switches it. Like, I wanted intrinsic motivation to say no. I didn't want to have to force the no. Yeah. I didn't want to have to force myself to like walk out of a room where there was alcohol. I didn't want to have to force myself to not hang out with people if they drank. I just didn't want it anymore. And by placing and investing my focus, my mind didn't have room to desire that anymore because I replaced it with something more desirable. And I think people get lost in the sauce trying to figure out like, okay, what is it that I want? What is it? Like even getting clear on that, because we think so long in our drinking days of what we don't want. What do I want? You start to actually put your energy there and it becomes like this internal narrative of like, alcohol, who? Oh no, I wasn't even thinking about that today. I was thinking about checking in with my coach. I was thinking about getting my entrepreneurship, my next step done. There's so many other things, but if we don't focus our energy somewhere in the future, our mind is just gonna run rampant, thinking about the past, thinking about escaping our feelings, thinking about the drink. And if you're doing sobriety in a different way, that could feel like just basically knowing yourself all day. No, don't drink. No, don't do that. No, you can't go there because you're going to want to drink. And I did not want that for the rest of my life. But when we,
Yeah. And now too, like it's so crazy how my mindset on like social situations have changed, because it used to be very much of like, I remember this probably was like February of 2023. So I was like 1 month, done. And I had like a friend's birthday party, a club, she got bottle service for everybody at the club. And I remember thinking like, okay, I like have a shit ton of evidence that like I have been loving the way I've been showing up, but should I do this? Should I go? And it was like, it felt like, am I going to be like persuaded into a drink? I knew I wouldn't like succumb to it, but was I going to show up to that event and just be wanting a drink? Was I going to show up and be like feeling like I'm left out from not having the drinks? And that early on, so I did end up going. And it was almost this like, and I don't want to say fake having fun, but it was me kind of forcing like, no, I promise I'm having fun, especially because they all knew I was like, sober and not drinking and not doing any of the party favors. And like, they knew that. So I was almost like dead set on going and like fucking having the most fun, because like sober people can do that. And I am me and I am fun. Like, and it was the fact that like, I just didn't have a whole lot of experience in this version of myself that I did go. And I will say I did have fun, but there were many thoughts of like, oh, everyone else is just like so loose and like so like flowy, and they're dancing and they're not self-conscious, and they're, talking with guys and they're not wondering what they're saying, and they're, taking photos and not being self-conscious. And like, I was very in my self-conscious, like, oh my God, I was in my head about it, right? So that was very early on in my sobriety journey. Now, like, first off, I have no shame in turning down events like that if I'm not feeling it. But more frequently than not, when those type of events come up, I'm like, hell yeah, like I want to go, because I have the space, the energy, the time, the desire to socially connect with people. I know that I can be in a place like that and truly have fun because I am me, because all those things that I like was almost forcing back then, those are so fundamental to like my core and like what I know about myself. And I've built so much evidence, right, so much confidence in this me, that I do go to these events and I do have fun. And I really do. I take the photos, I dance, I'm free, I'm me, I'm having conversation, and the funny thing is like in this sober me, like I realize how that while there are people, off the chains and, maybe our quality conversation isn't going to be there. There are also people that aren't drinking that much and that are kind of sitting there and they're being a little more, low key. And I can sit down and have a really great conversation with them. And I definitely wouldn't if I were drinking. But even at the time in my early sobriety, I probably would have been like self-conscious about connecting with that person to be like, oh my God, well, they're sitting on the couch bored. If I sit with them, am I also bored? But what does that say about me? Or people going to be questioning? And I don't have any of those thoughts now, right? So it's like, and it's all in just building confidence and stacking evidence in this version of you. So like, your perception of certain things from early on in sobriety will change the more and more you live into this. And, I have friends that are sober and they're just like, club, bar, scene, happy hours, those type of things, like just not of interest to me. And so they just say no. And I really do find some enjoyment in a handful of those activities, now and again or whatever. We also have people, like we have members in TSC who are like, holy shit, I know I love social connection. I love going out. I love being around people. I love dancing. I love this. And they're out soberly, vibing hard, having the most fun in a completely sober, alcohol-free, party favor-free environment because they've been stacking evidence for themselves in that way. So anyway, I just think it's so cool how like sobriety can look different for the life that you want. But in the beginning, it really is important to just be like, I need to get clear on like who do I want to be? And like, what excites me? What gives me energy? What gives me joy? What do I want to pursue? Back to the very beginning of this conversation, what you said, Maggie, of like, what do I want to do? And alcohol clouds that a lot of times. So understanding that might take a little bit of time, clarifying what that exactly is, what a passion looks like for you might take time. It also might take a little bit of experimenting. It might take a little bit of, well, I don't know, I saw this girl rollerblading, so I'm going to try rollerblading. Try it. Hate it. I saw these people rock climbing. This was me. I'm like, oh, let me try rock climbing. Tried rock climbing. Realized I need to either choose nice long nails or rock climbing. So I decided priority nails, rock climbing not. But you know what? Like over time, you start to realize like, wow, this type of thing. For me, I realized like nonprofit events, fitness events, networking, that type of stuff, I love. Motivational speaking, that type of stuff I love. I've even found that I love comedy, stand-up comedy. Like I'd never been to a comedy show before sobriety, and I love that. So I've gone to a few since. Being out in the sunshine, being out during the day is really my my best self. But it takes experimenting in a lot of these different ways. If you find that you're struggling to discover what your passion are or where you want to put that energy, kind of like what we were talking about, like, okay, where do I invest then? Where do I put my money? Because I don't know. I don't have like a bodybuilding passion. I don't have an entrepreneurial passion. Like, and yeah, I could buy therapy, but like, then what, So the cool thing for you guys, and just to, kind of poke this in here, is if that's you and you're sober curious and you're in this now fucking what phase, the cool thing is we have this program called the Sober Experiment, and maybe it's in line with what you want, because the reason we created it is Maggie and I realized we had a lot of these commonalities of what our beginning phases of sobriety looked like, what the struggle points were, what we wish we had specific guidance on, what we wish we had specific community in, all the things we wish we would have had, and then also all the things that we did and did successfully. Adding those elements in, we have put together to create a program called the Sober Experiment. And it's a 12-week program where you invest in, you place hold, right? With that money, with that decision, yes, I'm going to show up here in all these different areas. So we have people that, we provide support in the internal deep dive, deep digging. Of course, the work that we do is work you're gonna avoid if you're left to do it alone. We provide support in the fitness, the physical, the gym environment. Maggie and I both have deep-rooted backgrounds in personal training, fitness, health, wellness, nutrition, well-being, lifestyle approaches to being in the gym and being active. So you have support there. And then support in potential entrepreneurial goals and endeavors, but just also support in, like I said, the community, being surrounded by people who are on the same journey as you, figuring it out for themselves, having conversations that are like not sober focused, but they're rooted in the idea that like we're all figuring out sobriety right now. So in figuring out sobriety, I need to figure out what's exciting for me. What are my passions? Do I want to change careers? What's wrong in my relationships? What's right in my relationships? Who do I align better with in my real life? And these conversations that maybe won't come up in your normal physical life will come up when you're aligned with the people who are also on that same journey as you. I don't know if there's.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to your point, we put our heads together and we're like, what worked? What were the things that, allowed us to become reacquainted with ourselves, realize maybe what I thought I liked isn't actually what I like, but alcohol kind of hypnotized me into it. We put together what we knew worked for us, but then when we looked at that on a broad spectrum, we were like, okay, but we know there were pieces missing. We know that we didn't have sisterhood or brotherhood or community of people, to check in with and share our wins and get support. We didn't have that. We also kind of stumbled upon our reacquaintances with ourselves. We stumbled upon these aha moments, however you want to put it, by happenstance, just along the way. And that took me 6 months, a year. And I wish I could have expedited that instead of just stumbling upon it. I wish I had somebody that was helping me connect those dots and be able to see me just like the therapist, from the outside.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of that in the beginning came from paying someone to take me on that journey, and that's something that, I think about a lot and recently been thinking a lot about more is like, I was paying 3 separate people to guide me on 3 separate tracks that I wanted to go down, right? I told you guys the fitness coaching, which was over $500 a month, therapy was $300 a month, and then paying for a business specialist coach and specific area of genius, I was paying her. So when I look at it, I was spending about $1,300 to $1,500 a month to placehold the energy I wanted to put in these different areas, and well worth it. One thing though, and this is what Maggie and I really decided needed to be a thing, was like, what if I just had one place to invest and show up, and then I can have support in those areas, and I can have support with the community, like I said, being alongside people that are doing the same thing. And it wasn't like I felt pulls from multiple different places that because I was paying, right? So I knew I needed to show up in those areas, but it was like, oh, okay, wait, I paid for here, I paid for this, I paid for that. Okay, so with TSE, it's an investment, but actually what our members realize is that, first off, if they didn't do the program at all, they were going to spend that money no matter what. And they were likely going to spend it on the ways they've stacked evidence in the past. So in the habits, in the lifestyle, in the events, in the things that were keeping them in that exact version of themselves. Or they were going to do what we were talking about before, where they're like, yeah, I'm going to just cut off all drinking and just do this on my own. And then they're sitting on energy, sitting on money, sitting in boredom, sitting in isolation. And then that's when sobriety becomes this thing that we want to not be. So with TSC, it's like we give you the opportunity to invest and to place hold the version of yourself you want to put energy in, and then the space and the community to vibe out, to experiment, to dig deep, to have really vulnerable, hard conversations and reflections, and then have the one-on-one guidance in how to continue to move past that, right? And so that's what TSC is all about. In 12 weeks, you go through this literal transformation. Think of a caterpillar to a butterfly, and you evolve into this iconic version of yourself where you've been place holding energy. I'm gonna show up, and you're going. And at the end of the 12 weeks, even if you started the program being like, I don't know if a sober lifestyle is for me, I don't think I want to do without alcohol, I just want to find out how to not have it be such a limiting factor for me. Even if you started week 1 with that thought, by week 12, far, and most of our members end up in the mentality of, wow, my placeholder for the alcohol version of me is way back there. And I'm committed to these placeholders that are way up here and that are in front of me and that are in areas and tracks in my life that excite me. And that's where I want to go. So most of our members get to 12 weeks and they're like, I don't even want to talk about that old me. Like, I want to keep going. I want to keep being a part of this. I want to keep thriving here and showing up and holding myself accountable to the work that I've been doing for 12 weeks because it is awakened this version of myself that I fucking love. And that's our goal with the Sober Experiment. And that's why, like, honestly, it's because we wish we would have had this when we were figuring it out on our own. And when we really look at it, there's nothing in the sobriety space for all the sober curious minds out there. There is nothing that is like the Sober Experiment. There's nothing that is aligned with a life of sobriety, but not focused on it. That is helping you live into this sober lifestyle, but not consistently consumed in conversation about sobriety and alcohol and what the past looked like and what you used to do. There's nothing like it. And we created it because we wish we would have had it. And we did it on our own, but know that it doesn't have to look that way. Like, we did it on our own, but we really didn't, because we were paying all these other people in different areas of our life to hold us accountable to showing up there. So anyway, that was my little
I just feel like I'm so, I don't mean to toot our own horns here, but I'm so proud of what we've created, because it is taking all of those pieces that help us fall in love with ourselves and fall out of love with alcohol. It's putting it all together in one place where you're hyper focused instead of being torn by all of these different directions. Yes, it's valuable to have 3 different coaches, but let's have them all in one place, right? To be able to have fitness help, fitness programming, nutrition guidance, understanding that alcohol can negate cravings. Eating well changes your identity. It changes who you think you are. I'm somebody who treats my body well, and I control what's put in my mouth. Somewhere where we go through the psychotherapy topics and concepts that you would get in therapy. Somewhere where
we've even had, talk on.
Well, okay. So like Annie said earlier, you keep progressing. You invest in one thing, and then you realize that you want something else, and then you realize you want something else. And so when I initially invested in personal training and nutrition, I didn't think there was going to be anything else beyond that. I thought, well, I'm going to be a personal trainer and a nutritionist for people that, want to get their lives together. And then I kept realizing I have more potential. And I came across somebody that I think I'd been searching for my whole life. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate. He's the only credible doctor that I have found that says addiction is not a disease. He says you have to be compassionate, no more shame, no more judgment. He was the first person to speak of this freedom and a way to cure yourself, to fix your addiction. So I found him in my new authentic journey, and I saw that he had a graduate level psychotherapy program. And I had my eye on it for a few months. And I was like, I need to be in this course. I need to learn how to do this for myself, understand this psychotherapy, compassionate inquiry approach for myself. But how awesome would it be to be able to take these concepts like attachment versus authenticity, how to understand functionality of drinking. What is the function of your drinking right now? Understanding self-image, something called psycho-cybernetics. So for me to be able to understand that for my own healing, but then bring it to the sober experimenters, that is literally a one-stop shop. You're getting therapy, you're getting fitness, health, mindset, all of these things for your healing journey in one place. And I remember how scared I was to submit for that course, but then I kept looking back at all of the evidence that I had that I could achieve that was new for me. And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And so now it's just really a unique concept within TSE. And we just kind of polled our audience or our members recently and asked them kind of like, what were your favorite phases? What did you love most? And one of the most resounding pieces of feedback was like being able to understand their trauma, being able to understand attachment versus authenticity, being able to understand that their self-image is what drove them. Maybe we got to do an episode all on this. I don't want to get too carried away, but it is such a vital piece of it, I think,
Yeah, no, 100%, and like we had a member who was also investing in therapy at the same time that she was investing in TSE. And she said that she had her therapist and she was well aware that she was doing this program and, even was like, do it. Yes, it sounds amazingly in line, and gave her the kind of like the go ahead, looking through what TSE covered, what the outline, what the structure was, what the goal is in, deciding to commit to it. Her therapist was like, go ahead, do it. I don't see anything negative about this, and only potential progress. So as she's going through TSE, her therapist literally was like, whatever you're learning here, this is taking you leaps and bounds beyond the work that we've been doing, just one-on-one through therapy, through, every week or every other week, sometimes once a month sessions. She said the growth and the progress, development, confidence, the identity of this member transformed like epically in the time she was doing TSE. And, that just goes to say that, like, I mean, we will say, if you want to continue to seek therapy, seek therapy for sure. But we loved hearing this from a therapist working with a member alongside TSE, because it only goes to show that, like, this is spot on. This is an investment in your internal progression and your internal growth in a way that, like, literally nothing else out there will give to you. So maybe that's an entirely different episode, all these other things, but gosh, I kind of want to end it on, like, if you are in that sober curious, now fucking what phase, I understand the frustration, and I understand not entirely knowing, like, how to take steps in the direction of a sustained life in sobriety, even if you have those, resentments and that resistance to that word, the idea of it, right? I understand that. Just know, I hope that some of the tips and the words you heard today on this episode reminded you that you can change where you're putting energy, and you can change where you're investing in your future self. I know the topic on money is a little uncomfortable, but recognize what you're putting into right now: time, energy, mental thought, decision processes, time, energy, how much of you are you putting into staying the same? And I know you want different, but you're scared of it as well. I get that. A lot of humans are fearful of the unknown. So maybe that's a huge factor that's holding you back. But let's shelve what you've been doing. Like, you can pick it up off the shelf at any point if you choose to resume this version of you that you are right now. It'll always be there, I promise you. But in shelving that, it gives you a plethora of energy, funds, time, thoughts. Like, it gives you a lot of yourself to potentially put toward something else. Yeah. So do it, whether that's TSE or whether that's, doing your different paths and hiring coaches in those different areas. We want to empower you to do that. Literally take your money, put a placeholder, and then give the energy in that direction. And I promise you, the more and more that you do that, you're going to show up and you're going to be like, Annie, alcohol Annie over there, she's way behind, man. Like, she's on the shelf chilling, but I don't feel like picking her back up. I really don't. I am excited about these different paths that I am placeholding and showing up for and putting energy into.
Yeah, and if you are listening and you're just like, you know what? I'm ready for this. I'm ready to kind of put my funds in one place, maybe instead of having 3 or 4 different places that you are investing and building your new identity in. If you're like, TSE is for me, know that we have another round coming up. So just email us, get on our email list even, or reach out on.
We'll put that in the show notes below. Get on our email list and send us an email and let us know. Like,
we're also always on IG too, so you can send us a DM if that's faster. At Try the Sober Experiment, or at It's Annie Graft, at Magnify Maggie. We want to talk to you because we see it with every single member. We know that this awakening and falling in love with yourself is the antidote to the lifestyle that you don't like anymore. And it just takes that decision. Mm-hmm. We know it's scary, but it takes that decision to say, you know what, I'm going to put that placeholder in my dream life. And this is one of the first best steps you can do that. So reach out, get on the email list, let us know what questions you have. And we want to get you in our next round. So with that, Annie, anything I left out?
No. I love it. I love this episode, and I love every one of you guys listening. Just sending you our best.
Talk to you soon. We're out.